Hello everyone, and to the fellow reefers out there, hope your reefing journeys are going well. This is the 2-month update on my Waterbox Frag 85.3. I'll try and keep this short and sweet. There's a few little things that have been going on, and there's a couple of things that I've got to update you on. So the first thing was, about a week ago I was actually away for a week's holiday. I was actually on a cruise for a week, so my tank prep for going away was to do a water change. So I did my usual water change before I went, and I had a friend of mine who's not a reefer whatsoever, and he agreed to come in. So he came in. I was away from Saturday, and he came in Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and the Friday, and I was back on the Sunday. So he came in on those days, and he topped up the RO unit in the cabinet. He fed the fish mysis and some flake food, and all in one go. And he also dosed a couple of things. So he dosed my coralline grow, and he dosed 2 lots of no pox, measured amounts that I told him to do. And I was a little bit worried about going away and leaving the tank. As you can imagine, anyone who's had to do it with a marine tank, it's a little bit stressful. But I came back, thankfully everything was absolutely fine. There was no dramas, nothing failed. All the fish were absolutely fine, completely healthy, and so it was good. The glass was a bit of a mess, and it took me a good few goes to get on top of the glass. And you know, when you try and clean glass inside and out, it's an absolute mission to get it all clean. I do clean the inside of this tank by hand. I don't use any algae scrapers or anything like that. I do it all by hand. So it's, you know, not the fastest job in the world, but I do it twice a week normally when I'm here, and I spend more time doing it when I do my water change, just because the water level's a little bit lower. But as I said, I try and keep on top of it. It was a mess, the glass, when I came back, so but thankfully that was the only thing I had to deal with. And recently I needed to get a couple of bits, some more coralline grow. Popped into one of my local fish shops, and they had some of the regal blue tangs in, and I saw them the one day when I popped in. I actually went in with my family, and we just had a look around, and they had about 10 in one of their marine holding tanks. It wasn't that big of a tank, but they're only small, and they sort of caught my eye because I've wanted one for such a long time. But you know, I was a bit sort of, I don't know, am I going to be asking for trouble getting one, especially with the 2 tangs I've got, the silver spot and the sailfin. The sailfin's not been in that long either. So I think I was working the week I got back, so I was passing by again, and I popped back in to see if they had sold any or not, and I think they had about 5 left at that point. So I was like, okay, because the trouble is with the ones I tend to see is they don't ever see them that small. Any place that has them for sale that I've seen, they all seem to be quite large already, so, and they do get big, as you know. So I came back home, I had a little think about it, thought about the options going forward, because you know, I don't like buying fish, especially when you, in the long run, your tank's nowhere near big enough for it. But, and it's the same for the sailfin really. In the short term, absolutely fine. You know, not got a problem with it. In the long term, you know, 2 things will happen. I'll either rehome the fish. Thankfully, I know places that I can take them to, and there's people that would potentially have them off me that have got a lot larger tanks than what I've got. So as I said, I did think about it, and I thought, well, if I'm going to get one at this sort of size that they are, so I'll go and get one. I did ask for the biggest one they had left, so, and there she is. And I say she, I'm just sort of rolling with that. I think probably just from, you know, Finding Nemo and all that kind of jazz, you know, Dory being Dory, so we'll sort of call her a she, but don't take any offence to that. But so she went in, didn't do any, you know, probably the golden rule really, and I have been bit by it before, is, you know, quarantine. You know, ideally in the long run, really, I should really have a small quarantine setup for these fish going in. But again, there's some things you can do to try and mitigate yourself. You know, with putting new fish in, you know, obviously making sure the fish is feeding, making sure it's looking healthy. And to be fair, all the ones they had, even when they had the 10 in the tank, they all looked really healthy, and they're all out swimming, doing what they should be doing. So yeah, so I ended up purchasing her, and as I said, I quarantined her. Sorry, not quarantined her. I drip acclimated her for around an hour. Took it nice and steady, and put her in, and she was absolutely fine. Apart from the one of my damsels has turned a little bit rogue, and he decided that even when I'm cleaning now, he sort of comes out and takes a swipe at me, or my hand, and he was doing exactly the same to her. So he was just constantly, you know, whenever she came near his way, he was just sort of coming out from his rock on the left and having a right old pop at her. The two tangs, the silver spot and the sailfin, they were picking up on the behaviour from the damsel, and it was almost making it worse. So what was happening was the silver tang was sort of just amongst it all, and being involved in it. The sailfin was showing quite a dominant, was sort of flashing quite heavily to the side of her, and especially from the damsel, she took a right old, you know, bit of a beating really for the first few hours. I was a bit worried, thinking, oh my god, what have I done? I'm gonna have to take her out, and I did almost take her out. I was monitoring it, you know, by the hour really. I was just keeping an eye on it. Thankfully she didn't raise an eyebrow really. She kept herself to herself, and she did go and hide. So she prefers this right side of the tank. There's two new pieces of rock in there. There's a little sort of ledge at the back of the lower rock. There's a little crevice, and she likes to lie in there. So she sort of found that quite quickly. But originally she was down the sort of back left side of the tank, and she just went down there on the initial ambush from the damsel, and she just went down there and lied on her side. So I was thinking, oh my, you know, oh my days, what have I done? Absolute train wreck. And I thought I was going to have to pull her out and put her in the sump or do something, you know, because trying to catch the damsels is absolutely impossible unless you're going to drain the whole tank. So that wasn't really an option. But I said I monitored it. Next day I had work, so I was really a little bit concerned, but I did get my wife to just to keep an eye on it, keep me updated on what they were doing. But she did hide, so she hid for the best part of that day. Didn't really see her at all. Again, I was a little bit concerned. I was thinking, you know, a fish like that should be out really. Shouldn't really be hiding, even though she is smaller than the other fish. But it was a little bit concerning, and thankfully the second day, so I was at work again, but again I was keeping informed by my wife, but video calling whilst at work, and she was then coming out, but she was sort of coming out, going back in, coming out, going back in. She was sort of taking her time. The damsel was still being an absolute pain in going for her. And then I think it was that night as I came home from work, my wife said it just, the tables had turned really. So what had happened was she obviously decided she'd had enough of being sort of nipped at by the damsel. The sail thing was still flashing quite, you know, sort of regularly at her really also. And But my wife said what happened was she just sort of came out guns blazing almost. So she, first of all, she saw the damsel off, so she was actually starting to chase the damsel back, which was, I was actually quite pleased about, because you know those damsels can be, the one out of the three is just an absolute savage at the minute. So I was quite glad that she put that in its place, and she also wasn't shy to square up to the sailfin in the end. And you know, to be fair, the silver spot was probably the moral, you know, he was the law-abiding citizen in the tank really out of the lot. But so I think as she sort of came out guns blazing, they sort of backed off, and since then, as you can see by them interacting at the moment, she's just getting more and more confident now. So as I said, she is a bit smaller than the other two, but I'm so glad that she just sort of decided to come out and sort of stand up for herself a little bit. So I think in the long run, as I said, it's probably going to do the world a good anyway. And probably at the stage that the size of these fish are at the moment, as I said, I'm hoping in the long run they're all going to get on absolutely fine. They seem to be at the moment getting on really, really well. So that was the first thing. I then went to my other local fish shop, which is Tees Reef in Yardley, and I wasn't particularly going for fish. I was looking at what stock he had, certain bits and pieces, but I just sort of, you know, didn't really have, they did have some fish actually, but I thought I don't really want to be throwing, you know, loads in at one go. I just want to take it steady really. So I started looking at a couple of bits of coral. So we ended up picking up a couple of bits of softies. I ended up going for a bit of green Kenya tree, which is pretty obvious to spot on the top right hand side. And they did have a plate, like a small sort of tile rock, and that had some mushrooms on it that looked pretty cool. So I did want to get a mushroom of sorts. Wasn't sure on the sort of greens, the reds. These are sort of more orange. But they look quite nice, and on the slab that I ended up getting, there's about 4 on there, I think, so that's gone in there. I did have it on the sand bed yesterday, just while it was sort of settling in, and I've just sort of placed it up on the right hand side at the moment, but I need to decide if I'm gonna take it off of that and try and frag it, maybe actually get them onto the rock itself, but I'll see. I will take you closer in a minute to have a look at the tank. Tank parameters, obviously I went away, the coralline grow dosing dropped off, because I thought the worst thing that's going to happen is it's going to come down. The alkalinity has been at 10, so I thought the worst that's going to happen in a week is probably going to come down to 8, and I'd quite happily live with that anyway, rather than piling loads of pressure on my friend to dose every day, come in every day and do it. I just thought it was easier just to get him dose the days that he was in, and hopefully it wouldn't drop that much. So I tested it when I came back, and it was still at 10, remarkably, so that was actually quite nice when I tested. And I did a water change the day after I cleaned the glass, and then, so that was a week ago, and then this Friday just gone, is when I normally do my testing. So I did all my testing. So my nitrates were at 5 to 10. My pH is still 8.2. My alkalinity is still 10. And my calcium has dropped. So my calcium has dropped from 430 down to 400. Now this was before the water change, but it's still dropped. And my magnesium is now 1200, and that's come down from 13. So this tank is definitely at the stage now where it needs subsidized dosing of those elements, because if they come down any lower than that, that's when you're probably going to start getting some issues, or not much growth, etc., from the, you know, the few sort of softies that are in there really. So the end of this month, I think I'm going to be going on to the Red Seas new dosing 4-part program, which is still relatively new, but I feel fairly confident that I can make some sort of success of dosing that way, and we'll see how that goes. I'm trying to think at the minute. So the plan really for the rest of this month is, I think because on the previous setup of the M90, because it was such a smaller water volume, doing my sort of 1 bucket a week water change with the salt, which is the Red Sea black bucket I'm using, which is the Coral Pro. It's got quite high trace amounts of magnesium and calcium, and I think the bucket alkalinity of the salt is supposed to be 12 on that bucket. So I think it's because of that bucket is why it's kept my parameters, especially the magnesium calcium, it's kept them up for so long. Obviously this tank's been set up for a couple of months now, so obviously because I'm still only doing that 1 small bucket a week, it's obviously starting to go the other way now, where the replenishment bucket salt, new water isn't replenishing as many of the elements from that bucket, which is why I'm now starting to see the actual decline in magnesium and calcium. So I will have to start dosing going forward. As I said, that's going to be coming, and I will document that when I start it. Apart from that, I don't really think there's much else to update you on. Tank itself is still looking really good. The new rock on the right is slowly losing its purple tinge, and it's starting to get the brown stage on it and stuff. It's starting to blend in a little bit more of the other stuff, but not quite there yet. But I'll take you for a closer look on the tank. But as I said, that's the tank from a little bit of the far. If we just go in on this side, so that's just the side profile of it. One thing I was going to say is I've noticed now is I am starting to get good growth on the zoas, which is quite surprising. And also on this Frag plug, which is quite nice to see, I'm starting to get the coralline algae growing on that, which seems to have come out of nowhere, so that's quite nice. My candy canes have split, so that was just 2 heads, and it's now sort of going into 4. So when they're in the day at the sort of highlight, they're definitely separate and 4 heads. Excuse me. If we come around to the front, excuse me, that piece of old LPS is slowly recovering, and that's the green Kenya tree. It's quite nice that, because it's just on a shell, so that can just be moved up and down accordingly really. These orange zoas are starting to take off now. You can see they're starting to sort of grow off the plug, which was a little bit higher, and they're actually starting to creep onto the rock now. There's some at the back, but it's definitely starting to creep off of that plug, which is quite nice. This is still doing really well. That's just sort of slowly overtaking that rock, and those are the mushrooms back there. But as I said, fish, the cleanup crew, again just the turbo snails, a couple of Nazareth snails. I'm trying to think what else is in here really. There's not really a massive cleanup crew. I do need to get some more cleanup crew in this tank. As I said, I did my maintenance today, so all the glass has been cleaned. Excuse me, everything's had a dust down. But as I said, the water's still a little bit murky. But yeah, one final thing I just wanted to add is excuse me, this September in the UK there's a exhibition show called Aqua. Excuse me, and I will be attending that. I think I'm going on the Saturday, so if you are in the UK and you want to attend a show, it's on the 21st and 22nd of September. I think tickets are £12. Kids under the age of 13 or 12 getting free. And there's going to be quite a few different coral vendors there, a few different aquarium companies there. There's also reptiles, excuse me, a few other bits and pieces. So if any of you are going to go, I'll definitely recommend going. It looks like it's going to be a pretty good good event. But until next time, thanks for watching, and happy reefing.